I'm going to be reacting to her story with Tom at Blocks 8. Yo, Tom, say what's up. Huh?
Yo,
Look at the video started. Let me put this.
yeah. Go to
Yeah. Let's start.
popular.
My son wheeled through the door, throwing
Yeah.
gang signs, wearing all
Let me go to our most popular videos. Popular. This one. I've watched this one before.
I was walking alone at night when a police officer started walking beside me and grabbed my arm. Don't react and keep walking. Someone's following you. I subtly turned around and saw a man in a dark hood 30 feet behind me, matching my pace. I stopped for a second and he instantly leaned against the wall, trying to seem discreet. The officer told me to stay calm and walk with him. He guided me forward, gripping my arm so tight I couldn't pull away even if I wanted to. I kept glancing back and the man was now closer. That's when he walked through a streetlight and the light shined down on something metallic sticking from his pocket. My whole body was cold. I pressed closer to the officer and told him what I saw. He nodded and said, "Don't worry, we'll get you home. You're safe with me." But then he started steering us away from the lit-up main road and onto a darker sidewalk, almost like he was leading me somewhere specific. That, plus his grip on my arm made me feel uneasy. But when I turned around, the man was now walking straight at me, holding the metallic object and no longer trying to be discreet. I knew I had no choice but to trust the officer. I told him the man was closer, and he looked around, pointing to an alleyway nearby. This cuts through to the other side of the street. Cab from there. He gripped my arm even tighter. I was about to just go with it, but then I saw a taxi sitting 50 feet in front of me with its light on. I told the officer, "I'll just take this one," but his grip tightened. The man is still too close and the alleyway is safer. He tried pulling me again, but I yanked my arm free and sprinted to the cab. He reached for me again, but I was too far away. I got in and locked the door, shaking and unsure what to think. Then 3 weeks later, I was watching the morning news, and my coffee slipped out of my hands. 2 men were arrested for the murder of a woman, the officer who grabbed my arm and the man in the hood. They worked together. The man followed her at night, and the officer lured her into an alleyway under the guise of safety. The woman who trusted the officer never came home to her kids. I was walking alone at night when a police officer started walking beside me and grabbed my arm. "Don't react and keep walking. We were sitting in the living room watching Shark Tank when my daughter looked at me and said, Mommy, I'm gonna be the youngest CEO in the whole neighborhood." The next weekend, she set up a lemonade stand, but instead of mixing regular country time lemonade like every other kid, she came up with a bright idea. She spent the morning in our kitchen, mixing what she called gourmet flavors, watermelon mint, strawberry basil, and something she called lavender honey that actually tasted incredible. She printed labels from her home printer and charged 50 cents more per cup than every other kid on the block. Our neighbor, Mrs. Haggerty, was having a yard sale that weekend. Mia knocked on her door and offered her 10% of her profits to set up in front of her driveway for the foot traffic. She was out there at 7 in the morning with a painted sign and little sample cups for people to try before they bought. She sold out by noon. Saturday afternoon, she recruited 2 neighborhood kids and gave them matching visors. She trained them on how to greet customers and how to make change. By Sunday morning, she was running a 3-person operation from our front yard. That's when the man in the BMW
Maybe
pulled
I
up.
might
He
start
looked at
my
the
business,
stand
you
and
know.
said he only had Apple Pay.
Get
Mia
it,
reached under the
Dr.
table and pulled out her dad's
Maybe.
portable card reader.
Later.
She held it up to him and said, "No problem, sir. You can swipe, tap, or contactless. No excuses." His mouth dropped open while a 9-year-old processed his credit card for $3 worth of lemonade. An hour later, a kid 3 houses down set up his own stand. Mia walked over with the biggest smile and said, "Hey, Noah, want to merge? We'd cover way more customers together." Intimidated by her professional setup, he agreed immediately. Within an hour, she'd absorbed his whole operation and put him in charge of what she called their satellite location. By the end of the weekend, she counted everything out on the kitchen table, $217. She looked at her dad and said, "I just made more money than your Starbucks habit costs you in a week." Then she pulled out a notebook and started flipping through pages of profit
That's a
margins and
violation.
expense tracking for every flavor. I asked her where she learned about profit margins. She looked at me like it was the most obvious thing in the world. "YouTube, Mom. There's tutorials for everything." We were sitting in the living room watching Shark Tank when my daughter looked. This boy was trolling on the dark web when her sister noticed he slammed his laptop shut. He was shivering, and she knew something was wrong. Scared, he immediately ran to the living room. She yelled, "What happened?" But he wouldn't say anything. He started freaking out, closing all of their blinds, locking the front door, and she begged him to tell her what was going on. He was freaking out, and that's when she opened his laptop. She couldn't believe it. Someone sent him a picture of their front door. They sent another picture, and when she clicked on it, it was a picture of her through their window that said, "She looks tasty." She couldn't breathe. She was about to run and grab their dad, but her brother grabbed her arm saying, "No, he'll kill me if he knew I was on there." Neither of them slept that night until someone rang the doorbell the next morning. A guy with a badge told their dad they saw some suspicious activity coming from their network, but he told him he didn't know anything about it. He told them to stay safe. But the next day in class, her principal burst through their door. She told her she had to come with her that second and that the police were there, and she followed her to the office thinking it had to be her brother. But the second she walked in, she saw the same guy from yesterday holding his badge. He smiled when he saw her, and and told her
fake
there was an
police.
emergency at her house. He grabbed her arm and tried to
Real
pull her
fake
out, but she
police, fake
resisted.
police.
No, tell me what happened. Is my brother okay? But he didn't say anything. Come with us. She didn't want to, but her principal nodded and said, they're police officers,
No,
honey.
no,
Go with them. They
fake.
took her outside, but she noticed their car didn't have any police stickers on it. She thought these guys
fake.
would just be undercover, but when they put her in the back,
How
she
do you
immediately
think
noticed
the
there weren't
police
any door
officers
handles
on
either.
the
There was no
cover?
way she could get out. Where are we
Bro,
going?
she's
But they
gone.
laughed. She was sweating now. Please,
She's
I just want
gone.
to see my brother. But they
Please
didn't
go.
say anything until they saw flashing lights behind them. Both of the guys immediately got nervous.
Yes,
And when she
police.
realized it was the police, she knew this was her chance.
Get
The
the
cop was
fuck
walking
up,
up to the
get
car,
off.
and she was about to scream for help. But just before she did, she felt something sharp in her stomach. She looked down
scared of
and
this
saw the
cop.
man
Oh my
holding a knife
God.
against her. The cop
I
walked
hate
up
this
and looked
cop.
inside the car, and when he saw her crying, he looked suspicious. She tried anything she could to signal for help, but the man said, that's just my niece. She's upset because we didn't get McDonald's.
Oh
She
my
couldn't say
God.
anything. The knife was already cutting her
You're such
skin,
a
and
lie.
the cop just told them to have a good
Oh
day.
my
She
God.
was crying, but they drove off. She accepted her life was over. She wasn't ever going to see her family again until they started arguing. He
What?
saw our faces, man. If we kill her, they're going to know it was us. So in that moment, they opened the door and threw her out, and she had to run back with her hands tied. This boy was trolling on the dark web when her sister noticed he
Smart
That's why
glasses
guys,
are
you
actually going
don't
to change
troll on the dark web.
This is
the
why
entire world because
you
you
don't go on the dark
I was
web.
eating goldfish on the bleachers when two fourth graders asked my teacher if they could play kickball, and she stepped back and threw her hands up. Don't ask me, ask the king. They both turned around and walked toward me shaking. They were 2 grades older
see a
than me
king
and a foot
with the
taller.
dog.
They stopped at the bottom of the bleachers with their eyes glued to their shoes. Can we please play kickball at recess? I took my time finishing the goldfish in my mouth. I wiped the orange dust off my fingers onto my jeans. Tell me why. They both forced their eyes up to meet mine. The shorter one mumbled it was his birthday. I flicked my fingers like I was swatting flies. Have fun. They thanked me 4 times each before sprinting off. I reached into my bag for another handful of goldfish. A minute later, Mrs. Gibbons walked over with her hands clasped together. Sorry to bother you, sweetie king. There's a 3rd grader telling kids they can't use the swing stick. I told her to bring him to me. She nodded and walked off to find him. That's when a teacher I'd never seen before stormed across the yard, pointing straight at me. What in the world is going on here? Why are these children acting like you're in charge? Mrs. Gibbons sprinted back over and grabbed his elbow. Stop talking right now. The new teacher yanked his arm away and turned back to me. I am not letting a 2nd grader run this playground. He marched up the bleachers and grabbed my wrist. You're coming with me to the principal's office right now. Before he could pin me down, 2 men in black
think she
suits
has
came running
bodyguards.
across the yard. They slammed him into the
Knew
grass
it,
and
knew
pinned his
it.
hands behind his back without saying a word. I
Yo,
climbed down from the
how did
bleachers
you
and
not-
crouched next to his ear. Don't you
These are
ever
like-
disrespect me again. He
Get
dropped
her
the
from
goldfish
that.
into his mouth,
They
stood up,
literally
and walked off.
dragged
That's when the
him
principal
from
came
the
running out of
stands
the building. He took
onto
one look and dropped to his knees. Please forgive us, Miss
Literal
Sweetie
head
King.
hit
Mr.
the-
Dealwood will be fired by the end of the day. I kept walking past him without a word, munching on goldfish. The principal slapped Mr. Dealwood in the back of the head. You idiot! Her family runs the entire underground crime scene. I was eating goldfish on the bleachers when 2 4th graders asked. During my daughter's birthday party, I saw a woman named Janet pick up one of my daughter's wrapped gifts from the present table. She looked around to
What
see
is
if
that?
nobody was watching and put the bracelet-shaped present in her purse. I realized she was stealing my daughter's birthday presents and ran over and told her to immediately put that back. Her face went red and she said, "But my daughter wants a bracelet." I pointed at the bracelet on her wrist and told her to give her daughter that one. But Janet scoffed and replied, "This bracelet was too expensive. Kids don't deserve nice things." She walked away with the present still in her purse, and I ran after her. I said she can either put the gift back where she got it, or she gives me her own bracelet instead, or else I'm telling everyone here she's stealing an 8-year-old's birthday presents. Janet's jaw clenched, and she pulled out $20 from her purse, trying to bargain with me. I told her no, the present or the bracelet. She rolled her eyes and turned around, then quickly grabbed her daughter and went to leave. I knew I had to act before she got away with stealing the present, so I grabbed the nearby microphone and immediately announced, "Janet stole one of my daughter's gifts. Open your purse, Janet." She was almost at the front door, but suddenly stopped. Everybody turned to stare at her, and her daughter asked, "Mommy, is that true?" Janet's hands shook as she opened her purse, and everyone saw the bracelet-shaped wrapping. Janet was red with embarrassment and told her daughter, "I was only taking it for you." But her daughter reached her hand out and yanked Janet's expensive bracelet off Janet's wrist. She walked over to my daughter and said, "My mom tried to steal your bracelet, so you get to have hers. That's fair." I looked back and saw Janet start crying because she just lost her precious
that's
bracelet to the girl she was
actually
trying to
so
steal
sad.
from.
Deserved.
During my
Well
daughter's birthday
deserved.
party, I saw a woman named
WG.
Janet pick up
Well
one of my
deserved.
daughter's
You
wrapped
said
gift
it right-
from the
right
present
there,
table.
Tom.
She looked around to see
That's
How
well
can you
deserved.
get Robux in
I was pushing my baby on the swings when an old woman walked up to us and said, "Such a beautiful baby. May I see his shoulder?" I immediately pulled my son
No,
off
she
the
was
swing and
stealing your
backed away.
baby.
As we left, I heard her whisper, "The birthmark.
How could
I need to see if he has the
Yeah,
birthmark."
baby
2 weeks
shoulder.
later, she was parked in front
You
of our
might be her
building,
mother.
hunched over her steering wheel crying. When she saw me notice her, she drove away quickly. I held my baby extra tight that night and decided to take him to a smaller park 6 blocks away, just to be safe. But she showed up there too, this time with a teddy bear. The tag was still on it, but it looked old, like it had been saved for decades. I grabbed my son son out of the swing and yelled, "Leave us alone!" But she latched onto my shoulder and said, "Please, I just need to know about the birthmark. Does he have a star-shaped mark on his left shoulder?" I yanked her hand off and threatened to call the police. She backed off but followed us home at a distance, repeating, "My son had the same mark. Please just tell me." The next time she was at the park, a woman was with her saying, "Mom, you have to stop this. It's been 40 years. James is gone." The older woman broke down completely. "He's not gone. If I could just see the birthmark, I'd know." That's when I'd had enough. I marched over with my baby in my arms but froze when I saw her holding an old picture of a baby that somehow looked exactly like mine. "What's going on? Who is that?" I freaked out. The old woman said, "This is my son James. My ex-husband kidnapped him when he was a baby." Then she pointed at my son's shoulder. James had a perfect star right there. "Tell me, does your son have it too?" She looked so desperate and broken that I finally answered her. I pulled my son's sleeve back to show her the star-shaped birthmark on his left shoulder. The old woman's legs gave out. Her daughter caught her as she sobbed uncontrollably. "My husband has the same birthmark," I said, "and he's adopted." The old woman looked at me and whispered, "What's your husband's name?" "James." I was pushing my baby on the swings when an old woman "Such a beautiful baby. May I see his shoulder?" I immediately pulled my son off the... My daughter asked me, "Mom, can I dye my hair blonde?" I knocked my chair back so hard it hit the wall. "What did you just say to me?" Julia flinched. "I just asked if I could dye my... No, stop. Something is wrong with you. You told your aunt she looked like a burnt corn husk for going blonde. You told a girl her hair looked like it was dipped in piss. And now you want to be blonde?" She started crying. "Why are you screaming at me? It's literally just a color." I should have felt guilty, but I knew something was seriously wrong with my daughter. The next morning, Juliet walked into the kitchen asking me to make her scrambled eggs. I spat out my water because Juliet has gagged at eggs her entire life. I made them anyway because I needed to watch her eat them. She ate every single bite. "Thanks, Mom. These were really good." I called my best friend for help. She said I was spiraling. My mom told me to stop smothering Juliet. Her father just said, "Relax." Nobody was listening to me, but I wasn't wrong, because before she went to bed, she said, "Good night, Petra." She saw my horrified face and bonked her head. "Sorry, Mom. I meant Mom." Juliet had never called me Mom before. That weekend, we went to the mall because I needed to do something normal with her, but then she stopped in front of a mirror and said, "I really think I'd look good blonde." I grabbed her by the shoulders and turned her around to face me. "Why do you keep saying that? You have hated blonde hair your entire life. What is happening to you?" Juliet shoved me off. "Why can't I just want something different without you completely losing it?" "Because you're not my daughter. Why won't anybody believe me?" I was crying now. Juliet was backing away from me. Then a man walked over and said he was a psychiatrist and could help. The psychiatrist asked, "Juliet, do you have gaps in your memory?" She looked scared. "Sometimes I'm at school and then I'm home and I don't remember the drive." He recorded the session and then played parts of it back for her. She watched in horror. "That's not me. I didn't say that. That was 11 minutes ago, Juliet." He sat back in his chair. "Juliet, what I'm about to tell you is going to be hard to hear, but I need you to listen." She was shaking. "You have something called dissociative identity disorder. The blonde hair, the eggs, calling your mother Petra. That wasn't you, Juliet. There is someone else in your mind, and when she comes forward, you don't remember any of it." Juliet looked terrified. Juliet started treatment that same month. The alter's name is Eloise. She likes scrambled eggs and calls me Petra. Juliet still hates blonde hair. Eloise still asks to dye it. Some mornings I can tell who I'm talking to before she even opens her mouth. My daughter asked me, "Mom, can I dye my hair?"
Bro, now she's about to anymore.
Technically, she has two. No, she
Keep
has
smiling or you're sleeping
half
outside
a
tonight,
brain,
my
half
mom
a
said
brain.
while someone from Child Protective Services knocked on our front door. We'd been filming our morning routine for the 13th time because I kept blinking wrong. My face ached from holding the same smile since 6 a.m., and the ring lights had burned fresh marks up both my arms. My mom yanked my sleeves down over the burns before she opened the door. My dad grabbed my school workbook off the counter and shoved it under the couch. The woman at the door held up a badge and introduced herself as Melinda. "A viewer sent us screenshots of bruises and burns on your daughter from your recent videos." My mom walked around behind Melinda where only I could see her face twist into a silent threat. I smiled with all my teeth showing. Everything was amazing here. I love making videos with my parents every single day. Melinda swiped to a photo on her tablet and held it up. "Then why do you have a black eye covered with makeup in this video from last week?" "I hit a doorknob because I'm clumsy and my mom helped me cover it so viewers wouldn't worry." Melinda looked at me and back at my parents. "She's 10. Why isn't she in school right now?" My mom cut in fast. "She doesn't need school. She makes more money than most adults. Show me her school." My mom just stared at her. "We don't waste time on books when she could be filming." Melinda stood up straight up. "I need to speak with your daughter alone." My dad stepped forward, but Melinda held up her badge. "Refuse and I call the police. Your choice." They went into the kitchen, but left the door cracked open. Melinda put a piece of paper in my hands. "Read this out loud for me." I stared at the page for a long time and just held it up and smiled. "I love reading." She put a pen in my hand. "Write your name for me." My hand hovered over the paper, but I couldn't remember how to spell it. "Everything is perfect," I whispered, and my eyes went to the cracked door. Melinda leaned in close enough that only I could hear. "I'm getting them out of this room." She stood up and
I
opened the kitchen
would
door. Leave this house completely, or I
She
call for
can
backup
cook
right now.
much.
My dad slammed
She
the front
doesn't
door
know
on his
it-
way out.
you
She
can
sat back
dish
down
that
and looked
much.
at me. Where do you sleep? My jaw ached from smiling all day, and my eyes burned. In the basement. I walked her downstairs to a concrete floor with 2 thin blankets and no pillow. Melinda photographed everything and rolled my sleeves up and looked at the burns running up both arms. How did these happen? The lights get really hot during filming. She went straight to my parents and pulled out her phone. Your daughter can't read. She can't write her name. She's covered in burns and she sleeps on concrete. I am removing her from your care right now. My dad gripped the door frame. This kid is our property and we own everything she makes. Melinda held the phone closer to his face. 2 officers showed up 20 minutes later and my aunt was right behind them. She knelt down in front of me and wrapped both arms around my shoulders. You never have to smile for a camera again. Keep smiling or you're sleeping outside tonight. When the doctor said
Nah,
they could
that's
finally
crazy.
separate me and my conjoined twin, only one of us was happy. For
How?
10 years, me and Vanessa shared one bond, but we
That
made it
looks
work.
just
When we
good.
brushed our teeth in front of the mirror, I would brush and she would floss. When we
It's
painted our
actually sad.
nails, I'd do the hands and she'd do the feet. But when our parents finally saved enough money to have us separated, I thought we'd both be celebrating. But that night, Vanessa turned to me. I don't want us to go through with this. I can't live without you. I stroked my own hand to comfort her because I knew she could feel it. It's okay. The surgery will go fine. She didn't say anything, and I shrugged because I thought she'd come to her senses. And the next morning, while the doctors injected anesthesia into our arms and we counted back from 10, my heart was beating with adrenaline because I couldn't wait to have a life that was finally mine. But when we both woke up 8 hours later, I felt her moving and I screamed in horror. The surgeon stood at the end of the bed. Don't worry, we didn't go through with it. Your sister told us you'd both changed your minds. She said neither of you wanted to be apart. I was so horrified the room started spinning. She'd sabotaged my one chance at freedom. I never said that. I wanted this more than anything. Vanessa was already crying. I told you I can't live without you. I started hyperventilating because I knew my sister was going to do everything she could to keep us stuck together forever. My eyes
Bro,
darted around the room,
that's
desperately
true,
looking
love.
for a solution. And that's when I spotted a
True,
bag of
love.
peanuts someone had left on the edge of the bed. While Vanessa cried and no one was looking, I instantly grabbed a handful and immediately shoved it into my mouth. The allergic reaction started immediately, and I breathed a sigh of relief because I knew now they would be forced to do the surgery. I lied. My heart is failing. It hurts. I think it's cardiac arrest. Me and Vanessa's throats both started closing. I could feel her squeezing her own hand so hard it drew blood to punish me, but I didn't care anymore. The monitors went off all at once. We need to go through with this. They could die. This time, before Vanessa could say anything, they started injecting the anesthesia again. I woke up 8 hours later to 1 heartbeat on the monitor instead of 2. My one hand covered my mouth as I gasped because for the first time I was free. But I was immediately confused because Vanessa wasn't there. We were able to save both of you, but Vanessa woke up from the surgery first. And when she saw she was separated from you, she plugged out the health monitor on herself. We found out too late. I'm sorry. She always said she couldn't live without me. Turns out she was right. When the doctors said they could finally separate me and my conjoined twin.
This is the fake ad you see everywhere, right? But this is Ebony, a real
Bro,
game. Now I know what you're
Bro,
thinking, aren't they
you
exactly
can
the same?
live without someone.
I was about to perform my ballet dance in front of the
Like,
entire school
so you
when I
killed
saw a
yourself?
bucket of slime in the top corner of the curtain railing. It was positioned right over the area where my dance ended, and I clenched my fists because I knew someone was trying to sabotage me. But when the curtain was up and I locked eyes with my college scout who'd decide whether or not I'd get my dance school scholarship, I knew I had to dance. I hit my first turn, and the momentum carried me right at the bucket, so I cut it short
I have
and
to go
spun off
use
the
the
other
toilet.
way,
One-
landing a foot from the rim of the
sec.
bucket in a plie, and my heart was
One
pumping
sec,
with
guys.
adrenaline. I could see my bully Veronica in the front row, giggling with all the mean girls. She mouthed the words, "Careful, ballerina." She was trying to get me to flinch and fall under the slime bucket, so I tensed my body and kept dancing. I did a quadruple turn, gracefully landing with my hands raised above my head. Most of the auditorium
I need to
clapped,
go use the
and my
toilet.
college
I'll be
scout
back.
nodded while writing in his clipboard. But I noticed one of the mean girls was recording me, and when our eyes met, she mouthed, "You won't last long, ballerina. Everyone's about to watch you eat it." My knees started shaking because it was time for my grand finale, the final jump right under the slime bucket. I heard a whistle from behind the stage and saw Veronica was now standing where no one could see her, and her hand was on the rope of the bucket, getting ready to dump the entire thing on top of me. "You're not getting out of this, ballerina," she said, her phone still pointed right at me. I knew I only had a few seconds to react and make the right decision, so I threw myself into the grand jeté and came flying right at her face. She was so startled that she fell back, and the bucket went with her, and 3 liters of cold slime poured down over her own head. All of her fake friends turned their cameras towards her, still live streaming and laughing. Veronica stood frozen, green sludge sliding off her chin onto her screen. "Delete it," she screamed, clawing at her eyes. My scout caught my eye through the chaos and nodded once. "I've seen enough," he called up to the stage. "Welcome to Juilliard." I was about to perform my ballet dance in front of the
W.
Ready to unlock
What is
roadblocks?
this?
I handed a flight attendant a napkin that said, "The man next to me is not my father. Please help." She smiled and asked me if I wanted any peanuts. Then she walked away. My heart sank, and I felt Arthur's hand squeezing my thigh under the tray table. "You're not thinking about doing something stupid, are you?" I shook my head, and he smiled and patted me like a dog, saying, "Good girl." But I looked at the flight attendant and wondered if
guy
he was
is
going
so
to help
bad.
me, because in 3 hours we would land, and then I would vanish like the others Arthur told me about. But after a few minutes, the flight attendant came back pushing the drink cart. "Ma'am, we have a medical situation and need to move a few passengers so the crew can access the emergency equipment." Arthur's hand clamped down on my wrist. "She's not moving." The flight attendant kept her eyes on me and said, "Sir, I need to hear from her directly." But Arthur told her, "She's my daughter, and she's not right in the head. You move her and she'll have an episode." And so she bent down to fix something under my seat, and I felt her breath on my ear. "When I squeeze your hand, you run." And then she stood up and smiled at Arthur. "Let me check with my boss." But she reached toward me like she was handing me a pack of peanuts. Then her fingers closed around mine and squeezed hard. I ripped my arm free from Arthur and threw myself into the aisle, but he lunged after me and grabbed my arm. "You stupid girl, you're not going anywhere." And then the flight attendant slammed into him and yelled, "Get your hands off her." But Arthur shoved her into a drink cart and she hit the floor. But she yanked his leg, which sent him crashing into a row of seats. That's when 2 men grabbed him. "Federal air marshals, don't move," Arthur thrashed. "That's my daughter. She's insane and off her medication. Call the police." "We are the police. TSA flagged your name. You're wanted in 3 states." Arthur looked at me desperately, saying, "Tell them you wanted this." But I crouched down so my face was inches from his. "I want you to rot." I handed a flight attendant a napkin and said, "The man
Say
next
that
to me is
again.
not my father. Please help." She